The recount here is they took out this clip from a Biden speech where Biden is talking about potential World War III. So let's listen to the clip and then we'll talk about it. There's some stuff in here that is genuinely chilling. Let's listen.
As we provide this support to Ukraine, we're going to continue to stand together with our allies in Europe and send unmistakable message that we will defend every inch of NATO territory, every single inch, with a united, galvanized NATO. One movement. That's why I moved over 12,000 American forces along the borders with Russia, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Romania, etc. Because they move once. Granted, if we respond, it is World War III, but we have a sacred obligation on NATO territory, a sacred obligation, Article 5. As we pride the
Okay, so that's heavy right there. Obviously, the tweet says here, President Biden announces over 12,000 U.S. troops have been mobilized along the Russian border to defend NATO countries. Quote, granted, if we respond, it is World War III, but we have a sacred obligation on NATO territory. So those are two huge things right there. So this is the first time that I'm hearing. I knew that, U.S. troops had previously, within the past few years, been doing drills on Russia's border in NATO countries. I knew that was going on. Honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of that because that does strike me as, whatever the intentions are, that does strike me as provocative. That's going to make Russia be like, well, what the hell are you guys doing? Maybe you guys are the ones who are going to go on the offense. So it could freak them out and it could raise tensions. By the same token, if Russia was doing some sort of military exercises in Mexico or in Canada, we'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are we sure that what you're doing is defensive? This looks kind of offensive to us. So I didn't like that at all. Now, obviously, the game has changed, and since Russia has illegally and offensively invaded Ukraine, this is something that you totally understand the quote-unquote defensive posture of the West, where they say, look, we have our treaty obligations, we're going to deploy our troops to NATO territory, but this is the first time I'm hearing of 12,000 U.S. troops have already been mobilized, and they're along the Russian border. They're in the NATO countries. That's a lot of troops. That's boots on the ground, and that also raises the stakes in terms of, potential accidents or miscommunications and what happens if some artillery crosses the line and gets into Poland and injures a U.S. soldier, kills a U.S. soldier, or whatever. In the fog of war here, this is how you get the tit-for-tat escalation. And so even though I understand why they're doing it, it's also a deeply worrying step here. It's a really mind-blowing thing. I mean, it's chilling where we are right now. This is really, brink of World War III type stuff. And I don't think people are really looking at it for what it is and viewing it with a clear head. Because if they were, everybody would be terrified. Should be terrified. And the other thing is, Biden clearly understands the stakes. He says, granted, if we respond, it is World War III. But he goes on to say, but we have a sacred obligation to NATO territory. So make no mistake about it. If Putin crosses over into some NATO territory, you can't build those nuclear fallout bunkers fast enough, because there is no little bit of war between two nuclear armed powers. Because what happens is, one side is afraid the other side is just going to launch the nukes, and the other side is afraid the other side is just going to launch the nukes. So somebody goes ahead and presses that button, and then the other one goes ahead and retaliates and presses that button. And as soon as those things are in the air, again, there's no such thing as a little bit of war. It's not a thing between two nuclear armed countries. It's one thing when the United States, willy-nilly invades countries that don't have advanced militaries. It's terrible. It's condemnable. If they don't have nuclear weapons, they really can't protect themselves in any serious way. There's no strong deterrent. And so you see the U.S. bully countries like Iraq, for example. But it's a whole different ballgame with two nuclear armed powers. And for people to not understand the grave danger that's associated with it is deranged. It is. So anyway, there you have it. 12,000 U.S. troops are mobilized along the Russian border. Even though I understand why they're doing it, there's a clear argument it's defensive. It also scares the shit out of me because there could be miscommunication. There could be some sort of an issue, and we could immediately trip over ourselves and end up in World War III. But Biden seems to know the stakes, and he says it would be World War III if anything happens. So it's good that he knows the stakes. He's been resisting the pressure, the calls for a no-fly zone, which is wonderful. He should keep doing that. He shouldn't stop doing that. And a no-fly zone is also World War III. But let's see if, he can withstand the continued pressure to be more hawkish, more bellicose. In all seriousness, and maybe this puts me in the minority, I don't know, but I think the sanctions have even gone way too far. because so many of the sanctions are hurting innocent Russians. And it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. In fact, many of them are protesting Vladimir Putin. So to try to implode the entire Russian economy because of the actions of Putin and the military, it's not acceptable. I would rather sanction the oligarchs, Putin, the military, and let the citizens know, hey, we're on your side, but instead we've made them an enemy too. And so I think that was a giant mistake. And also, if the economic war is devastating enough, they can view that as an act of war. And in fact, there's been chatter that they do view it as an act of war. So what happens next? Well, who knows? Cyber attacks against the West. There's already been some cyber attacks recently. Did it have something to do with Russia? Maybe. I don't know. So there's going to be retaliation. And again, that's not good because these are the little escalations that get totally out of hand. And next thing you know, worst case scenario is unfolding. So there you have it. 12,000 U.S. troops on the border. Biden talking about World War III. It's a chilling and terrifying moment. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.